My sister demanded I move to a ruined barn because I got pregnant. Now that she discovered she can't afford her own rent, she came crawling back begging to stay in my house. I'm 26 years old, work part-time at an accounting office, and honestly never thought that at this age I'd be raising my three younger siblings in my dead grandmother's house. But well, life surprises you. The thing is that about a year and a half ago, my grandmother Clara died and left me her farmhouse. That old two-story structure with a half-destroyed barn in the back. And with the house came something I didn't expect. I mean, technically I did expect it because she had mentioned it to me before, but I didn't think it would actually happen. She left me legal guardianship of my siblings. Vanessa, who's 20, Jason, who's 16, and Olivia, who's barely 13. Our parents, well, that's another complicated story that basically boils down to they're not in the picture and probably never will be. And my grandmother raised all of us since I was like 10 years old. When I inherited the house, I thought it would be difficult but manageable. You know, we're siblings and we got along more or less okay. The house is big, has 4 bedrooms upstairs and enough space for everyone, plus a huge kitchen and a living room where we all fit perfectly. The barn is back there, completely abandoned, with half the roof fallen in and everything covered in mold, basically uninhabitable without a complete remodel that would cost, I don't know, like $30,000 minimum. My grandmother only used it to store old tools and things she never threw away because she was from that generation that doesn't throw anything out. So when she died and I took guardianship, we all officially moved in, though honestly we were already living there anyway. It's just that now I was the legal person responsible for everything. And that felt really heavy all of a sudden. The first few months were weird, but they worked. I worked. Vanessa went to the local community college studying I don't know what because she changes majors every semester. Jason was in high school being the typical teenager who just wants to be left alone, and Olivia in middle school going through that awkward 1-3-year-old stage where everything is drama. We established routines, like I cooked most of the time because I'm the only one who knows how to make something more complex than pasta with jar sauce, and everyone had responsibilities in the house. Vanessa took care of her room and nothing else because according to her she had a lot of homework. Jason took out the trash and mowed the lawn, and Olivia helped set the table and stuff like that. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. You know what I mean? There were normal sibling fights, like who used my shampoo or who left the dirty dishes, but nothing out of the ordinary. Fast forward to like 4 months ago. I met someone, a guy who works in construction and who I met when he came to fix some pipes that broke in the kitchen. His name is Mark. He's 28. Super hardworking, and honestly, I liked him from the beginning. We started dating and things moved fast. Maybe too fast looking back, but at the time it felt good to have someone who wasn't my responsibility. Someone I could just be Melissa with and not the older sister who has to act like mom to 3 people. I didn't tell my siblings much at first. Just that I was seeing someone, and they didn't really ask much either, truth be told. About 2.5 months ago, I realized my period wasn't coming. I bought a pregnancy test at the pharmacy in the next town over because I didn't want anyone I knew to see me buying it, and turns out it came out positive. I took 2 more tests to be sure, and all 3 came out with that pink line that basically tells you your life is about to change completely. I'm not going to lie. I went into total panic. I'm raising 3 people. I work part-time, earning just barely enough to keep the house running, and now I was going to have a baby. Mark and I talked. He was surprised but supportive, said he wanted to be present and that we were going to figure it out together, which made I feel a little better, but I was still terrified. About 3 weeks passed before I decided to tell my siblings. I chose a Sunday night after dinner, when we were all in the living room. Well, everyone except Jason, who was in his room playing video games, but I called him to come down. I sat on the couch and literally felt like my heart was going to come out of my chest. I told them, "Hey, I have to tell you something important," and they all looked at me with those worried faces like I was going to tell them we had to move or something. I took a deep breath and dropped the bomb. I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a baby probably in about 6 months or so. The reaction was, let's say, mixed. Olivia got excited immediately, like literally started jumping, saying she was going to be an aunt and that this was the best thing she'd heard in her life. Jason shrugged and said something like, "Okay, I guess that's fine," and then asked if he could go back to his room. But Vanessa, she just sat there, staring at me with this expression I couldn't decipher at first, like between surprise and something else that looked like annoyance. She didn't say anything for a long, awkward moment, and then asked, "And the father?" I explained that Mark and I were together and that he was going to be involved. She nodded but didn't say anything else, just got up and went to her room. I thought maybe she needed time to process the news. You know, it's a big change for everyone. But the next day at breakfast, things got weird. Vanessa came down and didn't even look at me, poured herself coffee and cereal, and sat as far away from me as possible at the table. I tried to start a conversation, but she only responded with monosyllables. Yes, no, I don't know. After Olivia and Jason left for school, Vanessa stayed a moment longer and finally said what she was thinking. She told me, "We need to talk about the baby." I thought maybe she was worried about space or money. Logical things, right? But no, she said. I think you should consider moving to the barn. I stood there with my coffee cup in my hand, unable to believe what I'd just heard. I asked her if she was serious, and she said yes. Completely serious. Her argument was that a baby was going to cry all the time. It was going to interrupt her sleep and her study routine, and that since I was the one who decided to have a baby, I should be the one to make the necessary adjustments to not bother the rest of the family. I told her, "Vanessa, the barn is literally falling apart. It doesn't even have working electricity, and half the roof has holes." She looked at me like that wasn't her problem and said I could fix it. That Mark worked in construction, so surely he could help me make it habitable. And that anyway, the baby wasn't going to need much space at first. I was so shocked I didn't even know what to say. I reminded her that this is my house, that Grandma left it to me specifically, and that I was giving everyone a place to live without charging them rent or anything. Vanessa immediately got defensive and said that Grandma wanted us to keep the family together. That's why she left me the house with the implicit condition that I take care of everyone, and that having a baby that was going to bother everyone wasn't exactly keeping family peace. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her I wasn't going to move to the damn barn, that it was ridiculous to even suggest it, and that if a baby's noise bothered her so much, maybe she should consider moving out herself. That made her even angrier, and she said she didn't have money to move out, that she barely had enough for college and her expenses, and that it wasn't fair that I changed the house dynamic without consulting anyone. I yelled at her, "I don't have to consult you about anything. It's my house and my life, and if I decided to have a baby, it's my decision." She stormed out and slammed her bedroom door. So hard I thought it was going to come off the hinges. The following days were horrible. Vanessa basically stopped talking to me completely. I tried to be the mature person and greet her in the mornings or ask how her day was, but she either ignored me completely or responded with sarcasm. She started doing passive-aggressive things that were clearly to annoy me, like she'd leave her dirty dishes right in the sink even though I'd just washed everything. She'd play her music at full volume when she knew I was resting, and she'd make snide comments whenever she could. Once she said out loud during dinner, "The more I think about it, the more I wonder if anyone really thought about how this baby was going to affect all of us, not just the person who decided to have it." Olivia looked uncomfortable, and Jason literally got up from the table and left without finishing his food. The situation started to really affect the younger ones. Olivia came to my room one night crying, saying she didn't like that Vanessa and I were fighting, that it reminded her of when our parents argued before they left. That broke my heart, because the last thing I wanted was to recreate that toxic environment we'd all suffered through as kids. Jason also became more distant, spent all his time locked in his room, and barely spoke at family dinners that used to be relatively pleasant. I realized that Vanessa's attitude wasn't just affecting me, it was destroying the family dynamic that Grandma wanted so badly to protect. I tried to talk to Vanessa several times, but she avoided me. If I entered a room, she'd leave. If I texted her, she wouldn't respond. If I tried to sit down to talk with her when she was in the kitchen, she'd get up and leave, saying she had things to do. It was like living with a hostile ghost for weeks, and the tension in the house was so thick you could literally feel it when you walked in. Mark would come visit me and notice immediately. He'd ask if I was okay, and I could only tell him that my sister was still being difficult about the baby thing. There was a breaking point about 3 weeks after the pregnancy announcement. It was Friday night, and I had organized a movie night like we used to do sometimes, thinking maybe we could have a normal moment all together. I bought popcorn, made hot chocolate for Olivia, who loves it, and put on a movie I thought everyone would enjoy. Jason came down. Olivia was excited, but when I went to get Vanessa from her room, she didn't even open the door. I told her we'd prepared a movie night, and she yelled from inside that she wasn't interested in spending time with someone so selfish, who only thought about herself. That was enough. I opened the door, which thank God didn't have a lock, and went in. Vanessa was lying on her bed looking at her phone and didn't even bother to look at me. I told her, "You know what? Enough. We need to resolve this right now because I'm sick of your attitude." She sat up and looked at me with those eyes full of resentment and said there was nothing to resolve, that I had made a selfish decision that was going to affect everyone and she didn't have to be happy about it. I told her I understood that change was scary, that it scared me too, but that her behavior was making Olivia cry and Jason isolate himself, and that if she really cared about the family, she'd stop acting like a spoiled child. Vanessa exploded. She yelled at me, "Who did I think I was to call her spoiled? When I was the one who had inherited the house only because Grandma loved me more. That we all knew I was always the favorite, and that this was just another example of how I could do whatever I wanted, without consequences." I yelled back that Grandma left me the house because she knew I was the only one responsible enough to keep the family together, that Vanessa could barely keep a job for more than 2 months and changed majors every semester without finishing anything, and that if anyone was selfish here, it was her for making all of this about herself when there were two younger kids scared by the tension she was creating. That left her quiet for a second. Then she said in a lower voice, but just as cutting, "If living with me bothers you so much, maybe I should leave then." I told her that if that's what she wanted to do, it was completely her right, that nobody was forcing her to stay, but that she couldn't keep living here and treating me like garbage in my own house. I added that if she decided to stay, she needed to accept that there was going to be a baby, and that we were all going to have to adapt, not just me moving to a rundown barn like it was some kind of punishment. I basically gave her an ultimatum. Either accept the situation and stop being passive-aggressive, or find another place to live. Because I wasn't going to keep walking on eggshells in my own house while I'm pregnant and trying to take care of everyone. Vanessa didn't say anything else that night, just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, and I left her room closing the door behind me. I went back to the living room where Jason and Olivia were waiting. They'd clearly heard the yelling, because the walls aren't exactly thick, and I told them everything was going to be okay, that it was just an argument that needed to happen. We watched the movie, but honestly none of us really paid attention. It was more like sitting in the same room in uncomfortable silence. The days after that confrontation were strange. Vanessa stopped being openly hostile, but she wasn't friendly either. It was like there was a cold truce between us. She did her thing, I did mine. We'd pass each other in the kitchen and greet each other with a nod, but nothing more. It wasn't ideal, but at least we weren't yelling, and that gave Jason and Olivia a break, who were clearly relieved that the tension had gone down, even if just a little. I thought maybe things were going to stay like this, in this state of uncomfortable but functional coexistence. Then about a week later, Vanessa announced during dinner that she'd decided to look for her own apartment. She said she'd been looking at options in town and that a friend from college had an available room that cost like $400 a month plus utilities. We all went quiet because we didn't know what to say. Olivia looked sad. Jason shrugged like always. And I simply told her that if that's what she wanted to do, I supported her. Inside, I felt guilty but also relieved. Like, it was horrible that my sister was leaving, but at the same time, I thought maybe it would be better for everyone if she had her own space, and I could prepare the house for the baby without all this tension. Vanessa started actively looking for apartments and roommates over the next 2 weeks. I saw her researching on her laptop, making calls, visiting places when she got out of class. I continued with my routine, going to work, doing prenatal appointments with Mark, mentally preparing myself to be a mom while still being the legal guardian of my siblings. The baby was growing. I was about 14 weeks by then, and my little belly was starting to show a bit, though I could still hide it with baggy clothes. Mark had started spending more time at the house, which Vanessa obviously didn't like, but at least she didn't make comments about it. But then economic reality hit Vanessa in the face. Turns out apartments in town were more expensive than she thought. They were all in the range of $600 to $800 a month plus utilities, and she worked part-time at a coffee shop, earning barely minimum wage. She did the math and realized she couldn't afford to live alone, not even with roommates. Not if she wanted to keep studying. That option with the friend that cost $400 a month turned out to be false, because the friend ended up renting the room to someone else who could pay her more. I saw the frustration on her face when she checked the classifieds and couldn't find anything remotely affordable. One night, about 2 weeks ago, Vanessa found me in the living room where I was watching TV, She sat on the other end of the couch and stayed quiet for a moment before speaking. Finally, she said, "I've been thinking, and I think I was too hasty about moving out." She admitted she'd been angry and had said things without really thinking about the consequences, and that the reality was she couldn't afford to live on her own while studying. She asked me if she could stay with the condition that we both make an effort to get along better. I'm not going to lie. Part of me wanted to tell her no, that she'd had her chance to be reasonable and had wasted it. But another part of me, the part that knew Grandma Clara had left us, that house specifically so we'd stay together as a family, couldn't just kick her out. I told her she could stay, but that I needed some clear rules. First, no more passive-aggressive comments about the baby or my pregnancy. Second, we were all going to have to make adjustments when the baby arrived. Not just me. And that meant there might be nights of crying and difficult days that we'd all have to tolerate. Third, I needed her to get more involved in the house, to help with chores, and stop acting like she was a guest. Vanessa accepted the terms, though I could see she wasn't completely happy with them. But at least it was a start, you know? At least we were talking and establishing boundaries instead of yelling at each other or ignoring each other. I also told her that when the baby was born, I didn't expect her to be a babysitter or anything like that Mark and I would take care of our child, but that I'd appreciate it if she at least tried to be part of the family, instead of resenting the baby's existence. Things since then have been, let's say, tolerable. Vanessa isn't warm or excited about the baby like Olivia is, who literally has already made a list of names she likes and has started knitting a blanket even though she's never knitted anything in her life and it's turning out horrible, but the attempt is adorable. Jason is still being Jason. Kind of indifferent, but at least he asked me the other day if I needed help assembling the crib that Mark and I bought on sale. Vanessa does her chores around the house, we greet each other in the mornings, and there are moments where it almost feels normal, like when the four of us are having dinner and talking about random stuff from the day. It's not perfect, and probably never will be. Vanessa and I have a complicated relationship now. There are scars from everything that happened that I don't know if they'll ever really heal. But we're trying, and I guess that's what matters. The baby's going to be born in about 3 months or so. I'm 26 weeks now, and I'm terrified but also excited. Mark and I are looking at options to move in together eventually when he saves enough for a down payment on a house, but for now we're still here at Grandma's house with my siblings. Sometimes I wonder what Grandma Clara would have done in this situation. She was always wise, like she always knew how to handle our sibling drama when we were kids. I think she would have told me that family is complicated, that love isn't always easy or pretty, but that it's worth fighting for. That's what I'm doing, I guess. Fighting to keep this weird dysfunctional family together even though sometimes it seems impossible. I have my bad days where I think it would have been easier to sell the house and everyone go their separate ways. But then I see Olivia excited, making plans for when the baby's born, or Jason helping me with heavy stuff without me asking, and I remember why I'm doing all this. Last week, Vanessa asked me if I'd already chosen a name for the baby. It was the first time since I announced the pregnancy that she showed any genuine interest. I told her Mark and I were considering some, but we hadn't decided yet. She suggested that if it's a girl, maybe we could consider Clara as a middle name, in honor of Grandma. It surprised me so. Too much I almost started crying right there in the kitchen. I told her I thought it was a beautiful idea and that we'd definitely consider it. It was a small but significant moment, like a sign that maybe, just maybe, we can get through all this and be a real family again. We still have a long way to go. The baby hasn't been born yet, and I know when it arrives there are going to be new challenges, new tensions, sleepless nights that are going to affect everyone in the house even though we try to minimize the noise. But for now, we're in a better place than 2 months ago, when Vanessa was demanding I move to a rundown barn. We're talking, we're establishing boundaries, and we're trying to find a way to coexist in this house that Grandma left us hoping we'd stay together. I don't know if we're completely honoring her memory, but we're doing our best, and at the end of the day, that has to be enough.